get ready, folks, because today we're taking a deep dive into something really cool, plant communication.
Plant communication.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at excerpts from a book called Finding the Mother Tree.
Oh, yeah.
It's by Suzanne Simard, and I'm really excited about this one.
Me too.
I mean, we're talking about, trees that are maybe sending secret signals to each other.
Right.
Trees recognizing their relatives and maybe even having personalities.
It's really fascinating stuff, and it's really changing how we think about the plant world.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of thought of plants as being pretty passive.
Yeah.
Just kind of soaking up the sun and water.
Yeah.
But now I'm hearing about them like gossiping with their neighbors.
Yeah.
Strategizing against predators.
Well, that's not too far from the truth.
Really?
For a long time, scientists, they held that view that plants are these passive organisms.
Yeah.
But back in the 1980s, there was a scientist named David Rhodes.
Okay.
And he started to question that whole assumption.
David Rhodes. What was he looking at?
Well, he was studying these tent caterpillars, and they were infesting this experimental forest at the University of Washington.
Okay.
And at first, the caterpillars were doing great. They were thriving.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, their populations crashed.
So like the trees fought back or?
It seemed that way.
Wow.
Rhodes found that the trees were actually changing the chemical makeup of their leaves, making them less tasty to the caterpillars.
Interesting.
And even toxic in some cases.
So they were like poisoning them.
Yeah, pretty much.
So pretty clever.
Yeah, so the trees were getting smart.
So, but wait a minute. How did all the trees know to do this?
All right.
Were they all being attacked?
Well, that's the really interesting part.
Okay.
Rhodes noticed that even trees that hadn't yet been attacked by the caterpillars were also changing their leaf chemistry.
Wow.
So he proposed this kind of radical idea.
Okay.
He said maybe the trees are communicating.
Whoa.
Sending airborne signals to warn each other about the threat.
Trees sending messages through the air.
Yeah.
How could they do that?
Well, he suggested that they might be using chemical signals.
Okay.
Kind of similar to how ethylene gas affects fruit ripening.
Ethylene gas.
Yeah, you know how like if you put a ripe banana next to an avocado?
Oh, yeah.
It'll ripen faster?
Yeah.
So maybe something like that. But for trees, sending distress signals.
Okay, like a tree version of ethylene?
Exactly.
Wow.
But back then,
Uh-huh.
the idea of plants communicating, especially through the air, was pretty out there.
Yeah, I bet.
A lot of scientists were very skeptical.
I can imagine.
It changes how we think about plants.
Yeah.
So,
So what happened?
yeah, what happened to Rhodes?
Yeah. Did anyone believe him?
Well, his research was definitely controversial,
Uh-huh.
and it kind of ultimately led him to leave research.
Oh, wow.
But his work did pave the way for others to explore this possibility of plant communication.
Okay, so even though he kind of got shut down,
Yeah.
it got other people thinking
Right.
about this.
Yeah, and shortly after Rhodes' work,
Okay.
two scientists, Ian Baldwin and Jack Schultz,
Uh-huh.
they designed this experiment to test this idea
Okay.
in a controlled lab setting.
Let's hear about this experiment.
All right, so they took sugar maple seedlings
Okay.
and they damaged the leaves of one seedling,
Uh-huh.
and guess what they found?
What?
The undamaged seedling nearby
Hmm.
also started producing those defensive compounds,
Well-
even though they weren't physically connected.
So even in a lab, these plants seem to be picking up on each other's distress calls.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's amazing.
It was a big step in supporting this idea that plants might be communicating in ways that we never really imagined.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about a story that's really interesting.
Okay.
It might not be scientifically peer-reviewed,
Okay.
but it really captures the potential power of
Right.
plant communication.
I'm ready.
All right.
Lay it on me.
So this story involves kudu,
Kudu?
a type of antelope,
Huh.
and a lot of dead acacia trees on South African game ranches.
Okay, this is the kudu story you were talking about earlier.
This is it.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right, so imagine these huge ranches,
Okay.
overgrazed,
Uh-huh.
with tons of acacia trees.
Got it.
And this wildlife manager named Wouter van Hoven,
Wouter van Hoven.
he was called in to figure out why thousands of kudu were dying mysteriously.
Thousands?
Yeah.
What was going on?
Well, the weird part was
Okay.
they were found dead with full stomachs of acacia leaves that looked undigested.
So they were eating but not getting any nutrients.
Exactly.
That's bizarre.
It is strange. So Van Hoven discovered that the acacia leaves had these crazy high levels of tannins.
Good.
Way above what's lethal for kudu.
Tannins.
Yeah.
So the leaves were like poisonous.
Yeah, essentially they were toxic.
Wow.
And he also saw that giraffes in the same area were very carefully picking and choosing which acacia leaves they ate.
Oh, so the giraffes knew something was up.
Right? Like, they knew to avoid certain trees.
Wow, that's interesting.
So Van Hoven's theory was that the acacias, stressed from all this overgrazing, were pumping up their tannin levels as a defense mechanism.
To protect themselves.
Yeah, to try to stop being eaten.
So they were like weaponizing their leaves?
You could say that. And he even suggested that they might be communicating with each other.
Whoa.
Perhaps using ethylene to warn nearby trees of the danger.
So they're not only making their leaves poisonous.
Right.
They're telling the other trees, hey, do this too.
Yeah, maybe sending out a signal.
That's incredible.
So you've got these acacia trees essentially weaponizing their leaves and maybe even coordinating their defenses.
Wow.
Now, while the kudu story isn't scientifically proven, it does raise a big question.
What's that?
Could trees be intentionally working together to protect themselves from being eaten?
That is a big question.
It is.
And that changes a lot of things.
Yeah, it changes how we think about forests.
It makes me look at trees a little differently now.
Yeah.
Like, what are they up to?
Who knows what they're thinking?
Right.
So
this leads us to...
Yeah, this leads us to a scientist. Who's been studying plant communication rigorously for decades. His name is Rick Carbon.
Rick Carbon?
Yeah, he's a true sagebrush whisperer.
Sagebrush whisperer. I like that.
So how does he fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Well, he's been working at a field site in Mammoth Lakes, California, studying sagebrush.
Sagebrush.
Yeah. And how they communicate.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that he borrows methods from animal behavior research, and he applies them to plants.
So he's looking for patterns in plant behavior that might be similar to how animals communicate.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And he's made some fascinating discoveries.
Okay, what's he found?
So, for instance, he found that sagebrush plants release these volatile chemicals, not just when they're damaged themselves, but also when their neighbors are under attack.
Wait, are you saying they're eavesdropping on each other's distress signals?
You could say that.
Wow.
And get this.
What?
They actually respond differently depending on who's sending the signal.
Really?
They're more likely to ramp up their defenses if the warning comes from a genetically related plant.
So they can recognize their relatives.
It seems like it.
That's wild.
It is wild, and it gets even more interesting.
Okay, more interesting than that.
Yeah, Carbon discovered that sagebrush actually adjust their communication based on how serious the threat is.
Oh.
It's like they have different alarm signals, depending on how dangerous the situation is.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pretty smart.
I'm starting to wonder now what my health plants are saying to each other.
Yeah.
This is really blowing my mind.
Well, there's a lot more to explore.
Okay.
And it might surprise you to hear that Carbon has been exploring the idea of plant personalities.
Wait, plant personalities?
Yeah.
Are you saying that plants have, like, unique personalities?
Yeah. That's what he's trying to figure out.
Like some are braver than others?
Yeah.
How can we even measure that in a plant?
Well, that's a good question, and that's exactly what Carbon is trying to figure out.
Okay.
You know, traditionally, plant science has focused on averages. But personality research looks at individual differences, sees those variations as valuable data. And Carbon's work with sagebrush led him to think that some plants might be more prone to signaling danger than others. Almost like some are more anxious, you know?
So are we talking about plants having emotions? Was that taking it too far?
That's a debate for another time.
Okay.
But what's really intriguing is that Carbon is trying to apply methods from psychology to study plant behavior.
Interesting.
Looking at how they perceive information and how they make decisions.
So he's trying to understand how a plant's personality might affect its actions.
Exactly.
This is incredible.
It is, and this research is really just scratching the surface. Okay.
Now that we've seen how plants might be communicating above ground,
right,
let's dive into what's happening beneath the surface.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper underground.
All right, are you ready to talk about those mother trees?
Yes, tell me about those mother trees.
Okay, let's explore those hidden connections.
Okay.
Underground,
I'm ready.
Remember those mother trees we talked about?
Oh, yeah, the wise elders of the forest.
Right, they're really key players in this whole underground communication network.
Okay, so remind me, how are these trees actually connecting to each other below ground?
It's all about these amazing fungal networks.
Fungal networks.
Yeah, they're called mycorrhizal networks.
Mycorrhizal.
Yeah, most plants have this symbiotic relationship with fungi that live in their roots. And these fungi create these vast underground networks that connect plants in all these intricate ways.
So it's like the internet for trees.
That's a great analogy.
Really?
Yeah, these mycorrhizal networks allow plants to trade nutrients.
Yeah. Share water, and even send chemical signals back and forth.
Wow, so it's like a giant underground marketplace.
Yeah.
Where they can barter for what they need.
Exactly. They're trading goods and services.
That's incredible.
It is. And Suzanne Simard, the author of Finding the Mother Tree that we're exploring, she's done a ton of research on these networks.
Yeah.
And she found that they can be super complex.
Okay.
With certain trees, often the oldest and largest, acting as hubs.
Hugs.
Yeah, kind of like central trading posts.
Oh, so those are the mother trees.
Exactly.
It's like they're the community leaders.
Right.
Keeping everyone connected and sharing resources.
They really are. And Simard's work has shown that these mother trees are super important for keeping the whole forest healthy.
Okay.
They can help support seedlings, protect weaker trees from stress.
Wow.
And even share nutrients with those that are struggling.
That's amazing.
It is.
It's like this whole hidden support system.
Right.
That we had no idea about.
Yeah, totally invisible to us.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how we manage forests.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned earlier about clear cutting.
Right.
That seems like that could really disrupt these networks.
Definitely.
And have like a ripple effect on the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. If we wipe out those mother trees and break those connections, it could make the whole forest less healthy.
Okay.
And less able to bounce back from things like droughts or disease outbreaks.
So maybe we need to rethink how we approach forestry.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on individual trees.
Right.
We need to consider these underground connections and how everything's linked together.
Exactly. We need to see the whole forest.
The whole forest.
Not just the trees.
It's like that old saying, you know, can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
Maybe we were literally too focused on the trees to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. We were missing the whole network.
The network.
The connections.
Okay, so this is all pretty amazing stuff.
It is.
But I'm sure not everyone's on board with this whole plant communication thing.
You're right.
There must be some skeptics out there.
Oh, yeah. There are some scientists who think we might be getting a little carried away. Like we're projecting human qualities onto plants.
So are we anthropomorphizing plants?
Yeah. Are we making them seem more human-like than they actually are? That's the question.
That's a good question.
So some scientists argue that plants are just reacting to chemical cues in their environment, not intentionally communicating.
Okay.
And they point out that a lot of the research has been done in labs, which might not perfectly reflect what's going on in nature.
So a healthy dose of skepticism is always a good thing in science, right?
Absolutely.
It pushes us to be more rigorous, make sure the evidence is strong.
It's important to have that debate and challenge each other's ideas. Yeah. That's how science moves forward.
Exactly.
But even if we don't call it communication, the fact remains that plants are responding to each other in complex ways.
That's true.
And those responses can affect the whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem.
Right. So whether it's intentional communication or something else, it's still a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
It changes how we understand the natural world.
Absolutely. So we've talked about these underground networks, these air signals. What other ways are plants communicating?
Well, there's growing evidence that plants might be able to sense and respond
to what?
To sound vibrations.
Wait, are you saying they can hear?
Well,
like if I play classical music for my houseplants, will they grow faster?
That's a good question. We don't know their musical preferences yet, but there have been some intriguing studies. For instance, researchers found that plants respond differently to the sound of caterpillars chewing on leaves versus the sound of wind.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like they're sensing those vibrations and it's triggering different responses.
Exactly. Now, plants don't have ears like we do.
Right.
But they do have these specialized cells that can detect vibration.
So maybe it's more like feeling the sound than hearing it the way we do.
Right. And these vibrations can set off a whole cascade of responses. Affecting their growth, their gene expression, even their defense mechanisms.
So they're really tuned into their acoustic environment.
They are.
It makes you wonder what else they might be sensing that we're totally oblivious to.
I know, there's definitely a lot more to discover.
Yeah.
And as we learn more about how plants sense and respond, we can start to figure out how to work with them better.
Okay.
Whether it's growing food, managing forests, or even designing urban spaces.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've talked about underground networks. We've talked about air signals, sound. What about their interactions with animals?
Oh, yeah.
Are plants communicating with the animal kingdom too?
Absolutely.
How so?
Well, think about flowers. Flowers.
Yeah, they've evolved all these incredible colors, shapes, and scents to attract pollinators.
Yeah, flowers are like nature's billboards.
That's a good way to put it.
They're advertising their sweet nectar to attract all the bees and butterflies.
Exactly, to get them to come visit.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of this win-win situation.
Right.
The plant gets pollinated. The pollinator gets a meal.
Everybody's happy.
Everyone wins, but it's not just about visual cues.
Right.
Plants also use scent to communicate with animals.
Scent, so like they're sending out perfumed messages.
Yeah, you could say that.
What kind of messages are they sending?
All sorts. Some plants release scents that mimic insect pheromones, attracting predators to help control pests.
Oh, so they're calling in reinforcements?
Exactly. They're calling for backup.
Wow.
Other plants send out signals that attract beneficial insects like ladybugs that prey on those pests.
So they're sending out welcome mats.
Yeah, for the good guys. That's some serious strategic communication.
It really is.
Plants are way more communicative than I ever imagined.
I know. It's amazing.
It's like they have a whole secret language.
Right.
That we're just starting to decipher.
Exactly. And as we learn more about this language, who knows what other amazing discoveries are out there?
It's really mind-blowing.
It is.
But I have to admit, all this talk about communication, it's making me wonder, what's the point?
The point of all this communication?
Yeah, why should we care if plants are talking to each other?
That's a great question, and it brings us to some really important implications for how we interact with the natural world.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about these implications. Okay, so we've uncovered all this amazing stuff about how plants communicate.
Right, all these different ways.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, what's the big takeaway here?
Yeah.
Why does it matter if plants are sending signals to each other?
Well, it's not just about cool science. You know, understanding plant communication can actually help us address some major challenges we're facing.
Okay, like what?
Like how to grow more food sustainably.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, we're dealing with climate change, soil problems, pests.
Right.
We need to feed more and more people.
Exactly.
So how could this knowledge about plants talking to each other actually help us grow food?
Well, imagine this. What if we could tap into plants' own defense systems instead of relying on pesticides?
Oh, interesting.
You know, if we understand their distress signals, maybe we could help them fight off pests naturally.
That would be amazing.
Right.
Less pollution, healthier food.
Exactly.
Is that really possible?
Well, it's definitely an area of active research.
Okay.
Scientists are trying to figure out how to trigger those defense responses without using harmful chemicals.
So it's like helping plants help themselves.
Oh.
Exactly.
I like that.
Working with nature.
Yeah.
Instead of against it.
And what about those mycorrhizal networks?
Oh,
those underground fungal connections. Right.
Could those help us grow food too?
Absolutely. Remember how those networks help plants share resources?
Yeah, like water and nutrients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we can boost those fungal communities in the soil, we could improve nutrient uptake, water retention, and even increase crop yields.
So it's like giving plants a superhighway for sharing and trading underground.
That's a great way to put it.
Really?
Yeah.
This is really making me rethink how we see agriculture.
Yeah.
It's not just about plowing and planting.
Right.
It's about understanding this whole web of communication and connections.
Yeah.
And this shift in thinking, it's not just relevant for farming.
Right.
It's important for how we manage forests, too.
Absolutely.
You know, we talked about clear cutting, disrupting those vital mycorrhizal networks.
It's like we've been breaking up those forest conversations.
Yeah, without realizing it.
Right. But what if we started listening to the forest?
Listening to the forest.
Yeah, what if we logged more carefully? You know, making sure to preserve those mother trees and the connections they maintain.
So it's like practicing forest whispering.
Yeah.
Instead of just chopping everything down.
Exactly. By understanding how trees communicate and support each other, we can manage forests in a way that promotes their natural resilience.
Okay.
And helps them adapt to climate change.
And I bet this knowledge could even be used in cities.
Right, absolutely.
To design greener, healthier urban spaces.
Imagine urban parks and green spaces that mimic the diversity and interconnectedness of natural ecosystems.
Interesting.
You know, we could use plant communication cues to create these thriving plant communities that support each other.
So instead of just random trees, we'd have these interconnected green oases in the middle of the city.
That would be amazing.
And don't forget about phytoremediation.
Oh, yeah.
Using plants to clean up pollution.
Right, if we know how plants respond to stress. Maybe we can use them to remove toxins from soil and water.
Wow.
Creating cleaner urban environments.
So we've talked about food forests, cities.
Right.
It seems like understanding plant communication has implications far beyond the lab.
Yeah, it's really about changing our entire relationship.
Our relationship
with nature.
With nature, that's a big one.
It is. It's about recognizing that we're not separate from nature. But we're part of this intricate web of life.
Yeah.
And it's about learning to listen.
To listen.
And work with nature's intelligence. Instead of trying to control it.
It's a pretty humbling thought, right?
It is.
To think that plants have been communicating all along.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to tune in.
We're just starting to understand their language.
And it raises some big questions, too.
It does.
Like, if plants are capable of this level of communication, does that change how we see them?
Yeah.
Does it change our responsibility towards them?
That's a really interesting question.
It is. It's like we're being challenged to expand our definition of intelligence and awareness.
And to recognize that other forms of life might have their own unique ways of perceiving and interacting with the world.
It really makes you think.
It does. And that's what makes this field so exciting.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about plants. It's about expanding our own understanding of life itself.
Well said.
So,
dear listeners, we hope this deep dive into the world of plant communication has blown your mind as much as ours.
I know, it's amazing.
It's a world of intricate connections and hidden conversations.
Right.
A testament to the incredible intelligence and resilience of nature.
Yeah.
Next time you're walking through a forest or tending your garden, take a moment to listen. Observe.
Right.
Appreciate the subtle communication happening all around you.
It's everywhere.
There's a whole world of wonder out there.
Yeah.
Just waiting to be discovered.
Keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep questioning. And most importantly, keep an open mind.
Well said. Thanks for